I would now like to welcome and introduce our panelists for this session today, Paulette Lewis, Ariel Gomez, and Angela Persad. Paulette Lewis is a nurse practitioner in the Scarborough Health Network's multidisciplinary care kidney clinic. Her main focus is patients in what we call stage 5 of chronic kidney disease. She partners with patients to prepare them for a timely transition to their chosen modality or how they want to do dialysis, with an emphasis on self-management and shared care. Paulette is dedicated to helping her patients build the skills they need to empower them to manage their health challenges. Ariel Gomez was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy in the year 2000. His condition was stable until 2014, when he became a chronic kidney disease patient. He had initially planned on doing peritoneal dialysis, but ended up doing hemodialysis in hospital instead. He did this for 3 months until he thankfully received a living kidney transplant from his sister in March of 2018. He is currently a volunteer with the Kidney Foundation through the peer support program, and he participates in virtual peer support group meetings and the annual Kidney Walk fundraising campaign. Angela Persad is a kidney patient and volunteer with the Kidney Foundation. She says she realized early on in her journey that educating herself as much as possible would better prepare her for when she eventually had to start dialysis, which she did last fall. Angela says that although she prepared herself mentally, she still had many questions when the time eventually came. She said she is glad she started dialysis when she did, so that she did not have what we call a crash start. And lastly, our moderator is Lisa Hune. Lisa has been a kidney patient for over 25 years. She has performed both peritoneal and hemodialysis. In 1995, she was fortunate to receive a kidney donated by her mother. Unfortunately, it did not last long. In 1997, though, she received a kidney and pancreas transplant. Her new kidney will be 24 years old on May 2nd of this year. She loves to share her experiences with those going through their own kidney journey, and she lives by the quote, "I live each day to the fullest with a positive attitude." Welcome, Lisa. Welcome all. Lisa, I'll pass it off to you and let's proceed.
Thank you, Craig. Welcome, everybody. To start off our session today, we're going to ask a poll question. So, Rosanna, if you could post the poll question, and we can go from there. So, what we hope to do today is I hope you to listen to 2 different speakers. I know each of them individually. One did quite preparation to before they went on dialysis, and the other one went what we call a crash start. So if we'd like to start our speakers with Angela to tell her story, and then Ariel will hear his story. And if there are any questions, please post them in the chat room. Oh, I'm sorry. Paulette is going first. Pardon me, Paulette. I'm sorry. Paulette will share her presentation first. I do apologize. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just getting ready to relax. So I'm
that's
share my screen. Just give me a second. So good evening, everyone. Let me just get this on. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak. My presentation is entitled, "What if I need to start dialysis?" And we're going to explore the patient's journey from a health provider's perspective. I'm going to introduce you to my patient, Mr. COVID Begon. He's a male that's married with a grown family, known to his nephrologist and kidney team for about 5 years, had a stable creatinine of about 400, the eGFR or his kidney function at 12%. He did receive education, but decided he did not want to make a decision around dialysis because he says, "I'm feeling fine. I'm working very hard to improve my kidney function back to 15%. So just give me some time." Unfortunately, His kidney function continued to drop. It dropped to 9%. And again, his nephrologist asked that he receive information and start making plans for dialysis. Mr. COVID and his wife became very angry because they felt that they were being scared into making a decision when they're feeling quite well. His last creatinine was over 1,000 with his kidneys working at less than %. And so he said, I'm not going to start dialysis until this pandemic is over. Unfortunately, he developed symptoms of decreased appetite, uremic symptoms, basically nausea, vomiting, and the whole cascade of symptoms, and needed to be admitted and start dialysis urgently. Now, I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, but this is quite common in our clinic. So when is the best time to educate and to prepare for dialysis? Ontario Renal Network has provided us with guidelines and resources. And one of them is the kidney care algorithm. And it actually says that we need to start dialysis preparation when the kidney function is between 21 and 25%. That's when you start doing education to patients. By the time your kidney hits between 11 to 15%, we should have a plan in place. For example, if you have a live donor, transplant workup should be in progress, and you should be making a decision around modality and start to get access creation or insertion. Now, there's a journey in preparing patients for dialysis. So once you have education around the different modalities, you need to be referred to the vascular surgeon if you have chosen hemodialysis to get a fistula or graft creation, or what we call at Scarborough, the body access surgeon. And this is where you look to see if you're suitable for peritoneal dialysis catheter insertion. So why is timely preparation important? Well, because there are many steps that's involved in preparing for dialysis. So for example, if you've chosen hemodialysis, be it in hospital or at home, you need a referral to a vascular surgeon, which can take some time. Then we have to go through vein mapping, and that's to determine the suitability or the size of your vein to be able to have a fistula creation. And a fistula can take anywhere up to 3 months or longer to develop. So we need to start this process early. And then we also have to plan for the unexpected delays, such as you may have a fistula created, but your vein might not sustain that fistula. You may need to have a second part done to your surgery, which we call transposing. So you have a good vein, but it's buried very deeply. And so the surgeon has to put the fistula in, create the fistula, but then later on he has to go back and bring it to the surface. So that again takes some time. And then we also have to think that you sometimes have very small vein that you may need to have a graft, which is an artificial piece of material added to your vein. And again, you may have no vein, which means that there's nothing that it can create. So we have to do two things. One, either revisit your dialysis option and maybe rethink about doing PD, peritoneal dialysis, or know that if dialysis is needed, we're going to be doing it with a central venous catheter, which is the one that sits on your chest. So you can see that there's some planning involved in this. Same thing for peritoneal dialysis. Again, if you want to do PD, what we need to do is to have you see a surgeon. We call him our body access surgeon. And at Scarborough, it's a general surgeon that puts the PD catheters in. And we need to have an assessment done to see if you're suitable. And once the catheter is inserted, we have to wait for a healing period of about 4 weeks. And again, we have to plan for unexpected circumstances. So for example, there might be a hernia that needs to be repaired. Once there's a hernia, for example, that needs to be repaired at Scarborough, and every program differs. But at Scarborough, you have to wait around 8 weeks before they will even attempt to put a PD catheter in. Other unexpected might be that you have a large abdominal girth and you're not suitable for PD, or you've had previous surgeries and you have scar tissues and you're just not suitable. So there is some planning that takes, and each unexpected event takes time and, delay you getting your catheter or getting prepared. Now, what supports are available to help me? What if I really, I'm struggling in knowing which modality to choose? Are there any support that's available to help me? So peer support, which Lisa and Craig and Ariel, and I believe Angela as well, are part of this. And these are people who have actually lived experience in dealing with the disease process as well as dialysis. At Scarborough, before COVID, we used to have peer support that actually comes to our clinic and are able to speak directly to patients. They used to have meetings every Wednesday, once a month. Once a month, they would have a meeting where you could actually join in and learn from patients who are actually experiencing the disease. But unfortunately, these are now on hold. However, we still have the one-on-one phone support, which I use Craig quite a bit. If I have a patient who's struggling or just needs some further information, I will call him up and he will usually decide and arrange for patients to speak with someone. We also have various series of video, and these are available to help patients. Patients are telling their stories as to why they chose one modality over the other. Consistent messaging from your healthcare team is also helpful. The social worker, the nurse, the doctors are always helping, and the messaging is consistent. One tool that's also used is the Ottawa Patient Decision Aid, and this is a series of questions that explore areas that are important to you and may have an impact on your life. So for example, if you like to travel, there's a series of questions that you can walk through to actually help you to determine how dialysis would look and still allow you to do the things you like to do. So we have quite a few support that's able to help you make your decision. So what are some of the reasons why Mr. COVID may have delayed preparing for dialysis? Most times it's fear of the unknown, fear of burdening your family, fear of just changing life totally. Denial is one of them, that this is really happening, because most time patients are still feeling well, so they don't really need of thinking of getting ready. And I've had patients told me that if I have a fistula in my arm, that means, every time I look at my arm, it reminds me that I have to, that I'm sick or that I had to do dialysis. So fear of loss of control of their life. What is this going to look like once I start dialysis? Am I going to be the same person? Feeling that their life is over emotionally and physically. Sometimes preconceived idea or misinformed ideas about what exactly is going to happen once you start dialysis. And lack of support from family. In Mrs. COVID's my scenario, the wife was just she was angry. She actually called and yelled at the doctor to say, why are you scaring us? Why are you telling us this? So, you need the support to move on. And sometimes burden to the family, but also role change. If you were the one that was the primary breadwinner, you were the one that was looking after things. What is this going to look like when I start dialysis? So these are some of the fears that our patients have around starting dialysis. Sorry, I'm going backward. So when is the best time to start dialysis? According to the Canadian Society of Nephrology, dialysis can be started when the kidney function is less than 15%. There is one or more symptoms of swelling, nausea, decreased appetite, or just uremic symptoms. But truthfully, it's individually based and can depend on several factors. So somebody who has heart complications, for example, may start dialysis at 16% or earlier if they're having fluid buildup or they have frequent admission to hospital because of heart complication. So it's really individualized and it depends on several factors. What I say is work with your nephrologist and your team. I always say to patients, your nephrologist you've been seeing for how many years and you've trusted his judgment or her judgment. If he's telling you it's time to start dialysis, then work with him and get an understanding as to why he's making those suggestions. Most times nephrologists will try to start patients when they're between, say, 7 to 10%. Some patients can go as low as 5 or 6%, but the important thing is to be ready. When I say ready, I mean having an access in place. If you have an access in place and you're still feeling well, oftentimes, depending on the program, and remember, we have many programs and each program is individualized, but many times I've seen where our patients are still able to stay off dialysis, but they have a workable fistula that should they need dialysis and should they start to feel unwell, in a couple of days or in a day or so, we can get them started. So preparation is really the important things. Some units actually, for peritoneal dialysis, they can do the dialysis catheter early and buried underneath the skin. So if they need to start dialysis, it's ready to go, and in a day or two, they can retrieve it and get going. So what are some of the benefits of starting dialysis early? Well, if you let yourself get very ill, it's going to take you longer to recover. It's pretty much like falling into a pit and trying to crawl out. You're going to feel unwell, and it takes longer for you to feel better. It is very difficult to gauge how unwell you're feeling until you start dialysis. I have patients who said, oh my goodness, I felt great until I started dialysis and realized I have so much more energy, my appetite is better. So it's very difficult to gauge how you're really feeling. If you're doing home dialysis, for example, home PD or home hemo, it's very difficult to learn when you're not feeling well. So if you start in a good time, when you're still feeling well, your training is going to go better. You're going to have better energy. Cognitively, you're going to be able to learn better, and an overall positive experience. It's going to avoid having Mr. COVID experience where he crashed into hospital and had to start what we call urgent starts. And shared care. Shared care is very, very big, where you're part of, you're making decisions. So if you're able to plan your dialysis start, then you're able to decide your access and the choice of dialysis that you're going to choose. Nothing is worse than the patients that I see when, like Mr. COVID, who is laying in bed and they're now told that you need to start dialysis and they haven't prepared. And now you have to be thinking, what do I do? So being prepared is so much more better mentally and emotionally for you. And one positive thing is that if you want to be on the transplant list, as you know, you're not able to get worked up for a transplant until you're actually on the list, unless you have a donor. So the sooner you start dialysis, the sooner we can start your workup and you can get on that transplant list. Thank you. If you have any question, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Paulette. That was great information to provide everybody, and we'll take those questions if we have them at the end, if that is okay with everybody. So now can we hear from Paulette? Can you share your story with us?
I just did.
Oh my gosh, my memory today. Angela, sorry. I'm going to have one of those days.
That's okay. We'll make it better for you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Prasad. About 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with kidney failure. So what I did was, I am alone. I'm a widow, and my children are grown and moved out of home. So there was decisions that I had to make by myself. You know what? I thought about it. I was born alone. I am in this alone. However, I attended quite a few presentations on kidney. The first one was PD. The second one was hemodialysis. My plan was to do home hemodialysis. I also attended the transplant presentation. I'm also a facilitator with the Kidney Foundation. I attended all my support group meetings, listened to people's stories, and I decided what I wanted. I love to travel. And I had a big event coming up, which was my eldest son was getting married. And I did not want any open wounds, and I was afraid of the central line. So I've decided to do hemodialysis, and I spoke with my nephrologist. He never said anything to me about a fistula. These are things that I learned. And I said to him, you know what? I don't want to wait for the last minute. I told him what the plans were, and I asked him to refer me to a vascular surgeon. However, my first try of the fistula did not work because they couldn't find veins. Now, I went back to my nephrologist. I told him what happened. And he said to me, well, you can do it on your right hand. My right hand is my dominant arm. And I said to him, like, hell no. So I asked him to refer me for a second opinion. I met the second vascular surgeon, and he found my veins after doing several tests. I had the procedure done. And of course, you have to go back and follow through, which I did. And my fistula was growing nicely. I had no problems, but I make sure I went to all my appointments with my vascular team. I wasn't ready at the time. I knew it was very early. At that time, when I was diagnosed, I was at 15%. But from what I learned on my own and listening to people, your kidney can deteriorate rapidly. So I was prepared to start whenever I was able to start. Like I said, I love to travel. I went to Costa Rica. I went to Cuba many times. I went to Costa Rica twice. My last travel was South America. I stayed 6 weeks down there. Everything was fine. I made sure I took out insurance in the event that I needed, but I didn't. However, last September, this is how I felt. And I knew it was in my heart, I knew it was time. But I was still doubting myself. I thought perhaps it was a COVID. So I lined up for 2.5 hours to be tested for COVID. It was negative. And then I called my nephrologist. He wanted me to go to Emerge, which I refused to go because of the COVID situation. I waited for my appointment with him in my clinic. And then I told him, listen, I think I need dialysis. And when he looked at the blood work, he says, yes, you do need dialysis. And that's where my journey started with dialysis. Now, there was a lot of things I didn't know what I have to go through, a lot of things concerning dialysis, which I'm learning at each session. And I'm so happy that I went on dialysis because truly I thought last September was my last month on earth. So here I am, healthy. I feel healthy. I'm ready to travel, but the only thing with that, the destination, I have to find a clinic to do dialysis. So I'm still thinking, and that's my story.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
You provided everybody a point of view that sometimes it is good to be prepared in regards to looking at your lifestyle and seeing what you need to do in regards to your situation. Ariel, can you share your story? See, I can get Ariel's name correct. I'm doing well now.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello, everyone. So sharing my story is something that is very personal to me. In my experience, living with kidney disease can be quite challenging. And as I reflected on my own journey, I thought some of you might resonate with the challenges that I have been through. So my journey with kidney disease started when I was diagnosed with IgA nephropathy in the year 2000. IgA nephropathy is an autoimmune disorder that affects the kidneys. It can remain silent for years, and it is usually characterized by the presence of blood or protein or both in the urine. In my case, it was protein. Most likely I was told, but I don't remember what my creatinine and eGFR values were at that time. Creatinine and eGFR are terms that I never paid attention to back then. I also don't remember any mention of dialysis by my nephrologist, probably because there was no need for it to be discussed at that time. What I do remember though was that I was advised to stay away from salty foods, that I will be monitored regularly from that time on, and that I shouldn't worry too much, which was what I did. Because I didn't feel anything wrong with me, I didn't see anything wrong with me, I thought my diagnosis wasn't really that serious and that I would be okay. I'm not sure if that attitude helped me, but what I can tell you is that for the next almost a decade and a half, my condition was quote unquote pretty stable. At least that's what I thought. But then time took its course and somehow my kidney function began to deteriorate rather quickly. I noticed that I was gasping for breath as I rushed to catch the morning bus on my way to work. I felt cold all the time, that I would be covered in sweaters in the heat of summer when everyone else around me was wearing shorts and t-shirts. This was when I was transferred and began to be monitored at the CKD or chronic kidney disease clinic. On my first day there, the two modalities of dialysis, namely peritoneal and hemodialysis, were explained to me. Also on that same day, I was advised that I should start thinking about the dialysis option that I would eventually take. Honestly, I felt overwhelmed. That was just too much for me to absorb and process at the same time. In my mind, I told myself, no, this couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. I didn't want to do any of it. I didn't want to imagine myself being on it. Being on dialysis. I was in denial. I began to realize that if and when I start dialysis, my life will be changed going forward. I wasn't sure how this will impact my job, especially my income. I wasn't sure if I would still be able to do things that I used to do, like, for example, travel. But most importantly, I'm taking care of a loved one with a physical disability and is dependent on me, and I don't know if I can still be able to do that. All of a sudden, my future became uncertain. I was afraid, I was very anxious, I was even angry at times. So I made the decision that I will delay dialysis for as long as I could. I followed everything that I was told at the CKD clinic in the hope that I would be able to, slow down the progression of my kidney disease. In fact, I was a CKD patient for about 4 years that most of the clinic staff had come to know me. Paulette is one of them. I was often asked, how come my creatinine was already so high, yet I still don't have an access point for dialysis? Why? Because even at that stage when both my legs and feet were swelling, when my body was itching, and when I was experiencing sleepless nights because of cramping, I was still hoping that I will be able to reverse my condition and completely avoid dialysis. But then the day came when dialysis became inevitable. I decided to choose peritoneal dialysis and had surgery for a PD catheter insertion. Unfortunately, as I was being trained to use my PD catheter, it wasn't draining properly. Initially, the plan was to fix the PD catheter through another surgery. However, by that time, my creatinine had gone up to a very dangerous level that my need for dialysis had become even more urgent. So instead of fixing my PD catheter, what happened is that a CVC line was inserted in my right chest. That happened in the morning, and by the afternoon of the same day, I had my very first session of hemodialysis, which I eventually ended up doing. I couldn't tell you how much I felt better after that very first session that I thought I should have started dialysis sooner rather than later. My name is Ariel, and this is my story on how and when I started dialysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel, for sharing your story. We've learned quite a bit about what it's like to do a crash start. And I'm just going to pose a couple questions. I just want to say before we start, if anybody has any questions, to post them in the chat. But if we don't have a chance to get to them, it's all a timing issue here. Then we will be more than happy to answer those questions. And you can always reach out to the Kidney Foundation as well. And I believe we've posted the links in the chat as well on those as well. So the question I have for both of you, if you could provide one piece of advice. Suppose the doctor said to you today that you needed to start dialysis. What would be one piece of advice that you would give the people in our audience, the patients in our audience, in regards to starting dialysis? I'm going to start with Angela, if that's okay with you, Angela.
Sure. First of all, like I said, you need to prepare yourself for when that time comes. You have to trust your nephrologist and your team. You have to trust the way you feel, okay? And you have to agree with them because you'll feel much better. I am living proof of that.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I'm trying to do chat as well. Ariel, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I do agree with Angela. But for me, what I can say is don't take kidney disease for granted. It is a very serious disease. And you need to work closely with your care team. It has to be a two-way communication in order for you to get the treatment that is most appropriate for you.
And another question is, I'll start with Ariel this time. Do you feel you made the right decision waiting to go on dialysis?
While I find it very difficult to say yes to dialysis, I would say that my decision to delay dialysis wasn't the wisest decision that I've ever made. Living with kidney disease kind of exposes you to a lot of other complications, just like what Paulette explained earlier. Like, for example, heart disease. Like if the longer you delay dialysis, the more that you expose yourself to other more serious consequences that can be fatal as well.
Right. And Angela, would you make the same decision today as you did before?
Yes, it was time, and I knew this in my heart of heart. Although I was prepared, there were still lots of questions, but I trust my nephrologist. As a matter of fact, he says to the nurses, I fire him many times because I just don't take his word, I go back to him as much as I need for him to answer some of the questions I had.
Right. And like both Ariel and Angela have said to us, and also Paulette in her presentation, it's very important that we're advocates and we ask questions. No questions are stupid. No questions. You shouldn't feel that anything you say or ask is not something. And if you're not getting clarification or you need more clarification in regards to what the answer is, maybe they're speaking a little technical because they do this all the time. Just say, you know what, I need this in layman's terms. I need to understand what's going on. And it's very important in regards to that. I have another question for the two of you. I know you both love to travel, and I think it's very interesting that one of you went on dialysis, waited, and one made preparation, even though you both like to travel. Why or why not? Maybe that's how I'm going to word it. I'm going to start with Angela this time.
Why did I prepare myself?
Well, in regards to travel, did you never think that, well, maybe I'll get caught in a country and I might not be able to get home to get medical care, or did that cross your mind? Or
well, to your question, my nephrologist and I discussed this. He would only allow me to fly within the 6-hour radius. However, going to South America is 8 hours, and I took that chance.
okay.
Yes, and there was always fear, but I still maintain my diet, eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and being careful that, that I wouldn't get sick.
Right.
Yeah.
Ariel, the same question for you.
Um, you
Did
know,
you feel, sorry, I'm going to clarify this a bit more. Did you feel that if you waited, you would finish all of your travel and then maybe not be able to do it in the future? Or how did you look at that picture?
as much as I want to, I don't travel a lot, and I haven't traveled in a while. But when I do, I like to travel stress-free and hassle-free. I like to travel light. I don't want to bring a lot of stuff with me. If I can bring everything in a backpack, I would do so. You know, as much as I like city sites, I also like to explore the adventure of nature spots. Maybe spend a couple of days here, a couple of days there. But especially when I'm in the company of my friends, anything can be spontaneous, and you can just decide to go and see places that are never really part of your original plan. But once you're on dialysis, I think you need to pre-plan not only your itinerary, but also your dialysis treatment. You have to make sure that you don't miss out on your dialysis. So I think you have less of a flexibility once you're on dialysis compared to when you're not, as far as travel is concerned.
Right. So I just wanted to tell those people who are thinking that travel's out of the question when you're on dialysis. It's not. There are many cruise ships where if you are on hemodialysis, like Angela and Ariel explained, that hemodialysis, you're hooked up to a machine basically, or a night cycler machine. You can still go. There are cruises and there are ways of doing that, as well as if you're on peritoneal, be it manual bags. When long time ago, I know I've been a patient, I haven't been on dialysis for many years, but I did do a crash start. When I wanted to travel, as simple as going to Niagara Falls, I live in Toronto, I put the bags on the coat rack in the car and hang them and do it while I was traveling. So I was still able to travel. In regards to, I chose, because of my situation, to just do short trips. I'm not as gutsy as Angela or Ariel in a lot of cases.
So can I just add, can you hear me? It's Paulette.
Paulette, I wasn't sure you were there. I didn't see you
I
there.
am. I can't see myself. I have no clue where I went, but I'm here.
Thank you. I would have brought you in. I do apologize.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that, traveling is still very much possible. Your care team will help you to plan your, if you're on peritoneal dialysis, most places you can get supplies and they will help you to get that supply there, or you can take it with you. We give you letters so that you can take it or have it sent along with you. Same thing with hemodialysis. It's a little bit more challenging, so to speak, because you do have to, like Angela was saying, you do need to make sure that wherever you're going, that dialysis is available. Hemodialysis, that is, if you're on hemodialysis, and you want to make sure that you plan all of this before you go. You don't want to just get up and travel and then, hoping to someone will accommodate you. No, we want you to make sure that your dialysis is arranged. You know when you're going to have your dialysis before you go. Right now, I can't speak for any time in the future, but right now, if you do your dialysis care outside, you bring your receipts back and you do get a refund from the government. I think it's $210 Canadian per session.
Yes, it is.
That's available right now. So the thing about it is that we want life to continue as much as possible for you before you go on dialysis. So if these are things that you like, then that's why we like to talk ahead of time and make plans so that you can continue these your life the way you had planned it. So if you like to travel, we want to look at peritoneal dialysis, which gives you a little bit more flexibility. Or if you're going to choose hemo, we want to make sure that you're still able to continue to live life as normally as possible.
And I'm just going to ask you each a closing thought or something you would like to leave everybody with in regards to dialysis and when to start. So Angela, can I start with you on that?
Sure. Try not to be in denial. First of all, you have a kidney problem, and ultimately you have to decide on which dialysis you will require or what is suitable for you. Once you have that in your mind, you're ready to go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ariel, do you have any closing thoughts or thoughts you want to leave everybody?
Yeah, well, I kind of resonated with what Angela mentioned. In my experience, though, I would say that acceptance really was the hardest thing for me to do when I was told that I need to start dialysis. And I think I would say it's common for most people. You have a fear of the unknown, that what's gonna happen once I start dialysis. But honestly, once you start on it, you feel a lot better than what you would have thought by not starting it sooner.
Thank you, Ariel. And Paulette, do you have any closing thoughts or are you okay?
I would say being prepared is important. It prevents you from getting sick and having to be hospitalized, and it makes your journey so much more easier. Seek help. The Kidney Foundation is a wonderful resource with peer support that you can speak to people. They've lived it. As a nurse, I've never had a PD catheter. I've never been on dialysis, but these group of people that have volunteered for the Kidney Foundation have been, and they'll be a resource that will be an extension to us as a healthcare team that can give you the lived experience. So do tap into it and speak with them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody. Before we conclude today's session, I can't even speak, Philippe would like to say something. Philippe, are you available?
I think his microphone is off.
Philippe, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
Merci Paulette et tous les participants pour cette présentation très enrichissante sur comment commencer la dialyse. Ça a été très utile d'entendre les histoires de patients ainsi que l'expérience de Paulette face à cette décision importante. Une fois de plus, pour de plus amples informations, veuillez contacter votre bureau régional de la Fondation du Rhin sur notre site web rhin.ca ou par courriel à programme@rhin.ca ou kidneyprograms.kidney.ca. Nous vous remercions de votre participation et nous allons maintenant reprendre la session générale. Vous pouvez y retourner en fermant cette fenêtre et en cliquant sur le lien figurant dans le courriel que vous avez reçu lors de votre inscription au forum. Nous vous y retrouverons.